Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Diego Cano. I am a third-year medical student at Paul Foster School of Medicine, and I want to talk to you about what educational resources are available to you and how to create a study plan so that you can overcome the pre-clerkship years and USMLE Step 1. Okay. The point of this slide is to say that success in medical school depends less on how hard you study and more on how efficiently you manage the overwhelming volume of information within the allotted amount of time you are given for each unit. It is not feasible to memorize everything in medical school, but you can build a system that helps you prioritize, retain, and apply the information that matters most. By the end of the presentation, I want you to have 4 takeaways. I want you to become aware of the major third-party resources, know the strengths and limitations of each resource, understand the basics of Anki, and then putting it all together to create a practical, repeatable study system you can adapt to fit your own learning style. And I want to emphasize there isn't one perfect study method, right? The goal is to understand what each resource is designed to do so that you can build a system that works for you. Okay. Let's begin with Boards and Beyond. Pictured is Dr. Ryan, the creator of B&B. Boards and Beyond is one of the most widely used third-party resources during the preclinical years. It consists of comprehensive lecture-style videos that cover the basic sciences. A lot of medical students use B&B because it focuses on helping you build a conceptual framework of the material rather than having you memorize isolated facts. I recommend using B&B as your first pass through new material. Watching these videos before or alongside your school's in-house lectures will definitely help you build a solid foundation for the preclinical years. Once you understand the concepts, assuming you watch the B&B videos first and then later you do your in-house lectures, this will help you become much more efficient when reviewing your in-house slides. The one thing I would say, one of the drawbacks for this B&B product is a lack of coverage in the detailed gross anatomy, embryology, and histology, being a little bit more brief when compared to other resources like Bootcamp or your in-house lectures. That being a good segue to talk about another excellent first pass resource called Bootcamp. So like B&B, Bootcamp is designed to teach basic medical sciences, but it takes a more interactive and visually engaging approach. These lessons are divided into shorter videos and are paired with active learning questions that allow you to check your understanding as you go. One of Bootcamp's biggest strengths is its organization. Topics are presented in a logical sequence, making it easy for you to progress through an entire block while reinforcing concepts immediately after watching the video with the bite-sized questions it offers for that specific video. Many students will choose either B&B or Bootcamp as their primary learning resource alongside their in-house lectures. These are excellent products, and the best choice often comes down to your personal learning style. I do want to make a note that while third-party resources are excellent for learning medicine at your own pace, it's important to remember that your professors are the ones developing your exams. Whether it be the 75-question MBME exam you take in the morning or the 75-question in-house summative exam you take in the afternoon. Okay, your in-house lectures should contain the information of what the third-party material should cover, in addition to school-specific material that may not be emphasized in third-party resources. So that makes attending lecture, or at least reviewing the lecture material, or watching the posted lecture videos on Kotora, an important part of your overall study plan. I do want to mention a specific in-house resource developed from one of the upperclassmen that can be found on the Anki Hub website. With a subscription, you can have access to Decolina. This is a pre-made Anki deck specifically designed around our school's curriculum, so it's based on what your faculty teach. Hopefully it can be a valuable supplement when preparing for your exams. So think of your study strategy as combining these two complementary perspectives. Third-party resources teach the core basic science concepts in a structured format, while your in-house lectures and weekly formative exams reveal how your faculty emphasizes, frames, and assesses those concepts. The weekly 25-question formative exams are especially valuable because they help you recognize your school's question writing style and identify the material your instructors consider testable. To recap, B&B and Bootcamp are excellent first-pass resources for building a strong understanding of the basic sciences at your own pace. Your in-house lectures then serve as the bridge between foundational knowledge and your school-specific expectations, ensuring you're prepared not only to understand the material, but also to succeed on your institution's exams. Before we move on to the next slide, I want to share one observation from my own experience during the pre-clerkship years. I think it's easy to assume that because a concept takes longer to learn, it will make up a larger portion of the exam. But in reality, that often was not the case. Every concept your curriculum teaches has the potential to be tested with equal importance. Some topics may require more time to understand, surely, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll carry more weight on the exam. So, approach each concept with the same level of attention and avoid over-prioritizing material simply because it feels more difficult to master. Okay, on to the next slide. So this slide is still a continuation of popular third-party products, but what I would consider as supplementary but still necessary. So the first will be Pathoma, which many medical students consider the gold standard for learning pathology or histology. This is taught by Dr. Hussein Sattar. Pathoma emphasizes the why behind the disease rather than presenting buzzwords or facts to memorize. So by understanding the underlying mechanism of the disease, you'll find it much easier to recognize the clinical presentation in the vignette. You can connect the pathology with the physiology and retain this information for the long term. A major strength of Pathoma is its outstanding histology images and his concise, high-yield explanations or his anecdotes. These are highly relevant not only for your in-house exams, but also for your future board preparation. Okay, lastly, every block will have you learning pathology, so I recommend incorporating Pathoma into your study plan as a second pass of the information. It pairs exceptionally well with your primary learning resource, whether it be B&B or Bootcamp. By doing this second pass with Pathoma, it helps reinforce the key concepts and helps provide a deeper understanding of the disease process. Okay, moving on to Dirty Medicine, another popular supplemental resource that is a free YouTube channel known for simplifying challenging topics through mnemonics, diagrams, and memorable memory tricks. It's especially effective for subjects that require heavy memorization, such as biochemistry, pharmacology, and some selected pathophysiology concepts. Dirty Medicine works as a reinforcement, especially if a concept isn't clicking after your initial review, or if you're looking for a memorable way to retain high-yield info before an exam, as a last-ditch effort to save yourself. And so Dirty Medicine is an excellent tool to help solidify your understanding. It fills the gaps when you need a different explanation or a different approach, and it often provides a helpful mnemonic that makes a difficult topic finally stick. Alright, so moving on to the First Aid textbook for USMLE Step 1. This is widely considered one of the more important review books in medical education because it compiles the highest yield pass level concepts you'll be expected to know for Step 1. First Aid organizes itself in the sequential order of the systems: embryology, anatomy, physiology, pathology, with some relevant histology pictures, and ending the chapter with pharmacology. So think of First Aid as a reference manual rather than a textbook that you read from start to finish. After you learn the topic through resources like B&B, Bootcamp, or Pathoma, your in-house lectures, you can then use First Aid to help you organize, consolidate, and revisit that information in one comprehensive resource. It's an excellent tool for sure for connecting concepts across organ systems and identifying what is most testable. But one of the more common mistakes made by students is trying to learn directly from First Aid as a first pass resource, because it's so First Aid is designed as a review resource, meaning that the explanations in the textbook are intentionally concise and assume you already have a foundational understanding of the material. So use it to reinforce and synthesize your knowledge, not as your first introduction to a new topic. Okay, so moving on to Sketchy. When it comes to learning microbiology and pharmacology, Sketchy remains one of the most highly regarded learning resources available. Rather than relying on rote memorization, Sketchy teaches through visual stories and memorable associations. Each microorganism and medication is represented by a detailed illustration in which every symbol corresponds to a high-yield fact, mechanism, side effect, or a clinical pearl. Although at first glance this may be a different way to learn, putting in the time investment and learning your bugs and drugs this way will pay dividends by transforming the memorization into a visual recall instead. So instead of trying to learn a fact, you often find yourself recalling the entire scene, making it much easier to retrieve information during exams. Okay, just to recap or give an example, let's say you watched all the GI bootcamp videos, then the Pathoma GI video playlist. Now you want to dig deep and master all the bugs and drugs for GI. This is when I would recommend integrating the use of Sketchy for your unit's relevant microbiology and pharmacology concepts. I will note another observation from my pre-clerkship experience, that is, do your due diligence in reviewing your professor's microbio and pharm lectures. Since they may include in-house specifics not covered in third-party, they may show up on your exams. Lastly, I would recommend to re-watch these videos throughout your preclinical years as they become relevant, since building these visual associations will give your brain an opportunity to reinforce this memory palace you create, leading to a strong long-term retention for both your in-house exams and future board preparation. Okay, so let's continue. Another resource you'll frequently hear about is the Melman PDFs. These are high-yield review documents designed to reinforce the concepts most commonly tested on board-style examinations. For example, the MBME exam, the CBSSA exam, or the CBSE exam you'll encounter in the future. But rather than teaching foundational science, these Melman PDFs that they are available online, they emphasize pattern recognition, clinical reasoning, and the subtle details that frequently appear on exams. Because of their concise, exam-focused format, I would recommend using the Melman PDFs after you've established a solid understanding of the underlying concepts. They are not intended to replace your primary learning resources, but instead serve as an efficient way to consolidate knowledge and identify high-yield patterns for the exam. I find them especially valuable during dedicated review periods or while preparing for the summative exam for the unit. I would recommend using this when your goal shifts away from learning new material, rather to now refining your understanding of the material and wanting to maximize exam performance. Okay, once you've built a foundation in the material, the next step is determining whether you can actually apply what you have learned. This is where Amboss comes in. Amboss is more than just a question bank. It's a comprehensive learning platform that combines board-style practice questions with detailed answer explanations, but it also has an integrated medical library with explanations for every concept you can think of, with diagnostic images. Oh, and when you're doing questions, this is unique to Amboss, I think, then you need a little help on the question. It has a button called Attending Tips, which provide a valuable clinical pearl to help you connect a piece of the puzzle in the question to hopefully answer the question correctly. One of my favorite features on Amboss is the ability to customize questions based on hammer levels, or the level of difficulty, where 1 is easy, 2, 3, 4 hammers. It increases in the amount of hammers you add. I would recommend working your way up by hammer levels so that you can grow confident in the application of your knowledge. Try your best to complete hammer level 1 through 3 within the allotted time you have before the exam. Another thing I want to mention, but will make more sense if you have your Amboss custom test interface in front of you, is selecting Step 1, Supplemental Step 1, and Basic Science exams, those little boxes you see, when creating question blocks to maximize the amount of questions that can populate for your customized exam, whether it be if you're basing it off an organ system or a compiled list of Amboss articles that align with the concepts covered in your current unit. Lastly, an important mindset to have when doing Amboss questions is that the question banks are a learning tool. UWorld later on, I don't know if we'll talk about this in detail, but as well is a learning tool. It's not a tool to grade you and how you're doing. So don't be discouraged by low scores early in your studies. Every missed question is an opportunity to identify a knowledge gap, hopefully while you still have time to correct it, right? So the goal isn't to prove what you already know, it's to uncover what you still need to learn before the exam day. Alright, up to this point we've discussed resources that help you learn new information. However, understanding a concept today doesn't guarantee you'll remember it several weeks or even several months from now. Okay, this information will elude you regardless of how well you master it. And as medical school progresses, new material accumulates rapidly, making retention one of the greatest challenges you'll face. So this is kind of where we start talking about Anki and how it fits into your study system. Rather than helping you learn concepts for the first time, Anki is designed to help you retain the information through spaced repetition and active recall. It ensures that important information stays fresh in your memory while you continue building on your knowledge on a day-to-day basis, allowing you to keep pace with the ever-growing volume of material throughout medical school. This can be true regardless if you learn to create your own Anki cards or if you use the Decolina deck, or if you are subscribing to the Anki Hub to follow the Anki Step 1, Step 2 deck. I will also mention that it is completely possible to pass medical school and the USMLE exams probably without the use of Anki, for it can be experienced as a daily burden by some medical students. But in my honest opinion, or in my experience, in my journey on learning how to study in medical school, the best scores in my pre-clerkship exams were when I used Anki to study. Going back to the mention of the Anki deck, I think one of the greatest strengths is that it's organized and tagged by resource, meaning after you complete a B&B video, a bootcamp video, Pathoma or Sketchy video, you can simply unsuspend the corresponding cards and immediately begin reinforcing the material you've just learned. This creates a smooth transition from learning a concept to committing it to long-term memory. Okay, so to make your workflow even more efficient, I recommend installing two Anki add-ons. The first is the Amboss add-on, which allows you to instantly look up unfamiliar terms, diseases, or concepts directly from your flashcards without leaving Anki. So this keeps you focused and minimizes interruptions to your study session. The next one would be the Review Heat Map, which visually tracks your daily review streak. While it's a simple add-on, it's a powerful accountability tool that helps you stay consistent, arguably the most important factor for success with spaced repetition tools. There are hundreds of Anki add-ons available online, but these two provide an excellent starting point. They enhance your study experience without adding unnecessary complexity, allowing you to focus on what matters most, which is learning efficiently and retaining information over the long term. Okay, now that we've discussed the major study resources and tools, let's put everything together into a practical study workflow. Okay, so this slide summarizes what my studying plan overview actually looked like. The first thing I did every morning was complete my Anki reviews before I learned anything new, and made sure I retained what I had already learned. I treated my reviews as the highest priority because missing them would only make future reviews pile up, but keeping up with them helps preserve everything you've learned so far. Once my reviews were finished, I moved on to learning new material. This will be around maybe like 1 p.m., right? So from like 6:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. ish, I'm kind of trying to finish reviewing my Anki in the morning. So by 1 p.m., I am learning new material. My first pass was usually through bootcamp because that's what I preferred as my first pass, and it gave me a structured explanation of the basic science concepts. So as I finished each video, I would immediately unsuspend the corresponding Anki cards for that watched video, so I could start reviewing that material the same day. Once I would complete my first pass, for example, of the Bootcamp GI video playlist, for example, while keeping up with my Anki, it maybe took me 3 weeks. From there, I would follow up with Pathoma. That was my preferred second pass of the material. I would continue to use my Anki, keep up with it, and a thing you will notice is that the Anki cards overlap because of the way the Anki tag system is set up. All these third-party products tag themselves on the same Anki card, so that there really is not much new Anki cards to unlock or that added on to your total from watching a separate third-party product like Pathoma. Like maybe 90%, 95% of the Anki cards were already unlocked from my first pass, so when I get to my second pass, I'm barely unlocking any new cards. So it's kind of more like a nice leisure second watch of the videos with Pathoma, and this really helped me better connect the mechanisms behind the disease and reinforce the big picture concepts. Similar thing with the use of Sketchy for studying microbiome and farm, and if there was any biochemistry stated in the curriculum's learning objectives, I would go to Dirty Medicine, and hopefully there was some video explaining that pathway. I would recommend for these pathways, these biochem pathways, that you draw out the pathway or his diagrams that Dirty Medicine does, because it will help you better retain that information. After I had worked through my preferred third-party resources, I shifted my attention to my school's curriculum. At this point, or at that point, I reviewed the in-house lectures and completed the corresponding weekly formative exams. This helped me understand not only the material, but also how my faculty liked to test it, like their writing style. At around this time, I would postpone or just stop doing my daily Anki reviews, and this is like 1 week before the exam. This is where I would try to just focus and deep dive concepts, and finally start using Amboss to apply my knowledge and find my concept gaps. And so I would try to do hammer level 1 through 3, try to complete those with the best success rate that I could obtain. And then the last thing I would try to do, like the day before the test, is to read either the first aid chapter or the Melman PDF, and then just take the evening off the day before the exam and get some good night's sleep and be ready for the exam day the following day, so at this point you're probably asking yourself, well, this all sounds great, but how am I supposed to know if I'm pacing myself correctly? How do I make sure I have enough time for a second pass to review my in-house lectures and still complete Amboss questions before the exam? I think the best method is to pace yourself by Anki cards. Since the Anki deck is tagged by resource, you can determine exactly how many new cards correspond to your boot camp or your if you want to watch BMB, the Pathoma or sketchy videos. Add up those cards and divide them by the number of days you've allocated for your first pass. That gives you a daily card goal, which naturally determines how much new material you'll learn each day. I think pacing yourself with Anki cards instead of watching number of X videos per day will give you a much more objective measure of your daily workload. Some videos are only 10 minutes long, while others can be 40 minutes. Similarly, some videos unlock 10 Anki flashcards, while others unlock more than 145 for just one video. Planning around the number of new cards kept my workload much more consistent from one day to the next. The key is deciding on a daily workload before your block begins and sticking to it consistently. If you stay on pace each day, you'll naturally finish your first pass early enough to complete your second pass, review your in-house material, and spend meaningful time doing practice questions before exam day. Okay, let's finish this up with some final advice and tips. The first piece of advice I'll leave you with is this: find your own pace. It's easy to look around and compare yourself to classmates who seem to be studying more hours, watching more videos, or finishing more questions. Try not to fall into that trap. Everyone learns at a different speed, and everyone comes into medical school with different strengths and weaknesses. Focus on building a schedule that works for you. Consistency is far more important than keeping up with someone else's pace. Secondly, prioritize consistency over intensity. Avoid the mindset that you'll simply catch up during a short, high-pressure, dedicated study period. Instead, build the habit of making steady progress every day. A consistent routine not only improves long-term retention, but also reduces stress and helps prevent burnout throughout the semester. Statistically speaking, you will probably get sick in the first 2 years of medical school at least once. Hopefully not, but maybe. Try to take advantage of you studying early or you pushing yourself to take those 2 to 3 days off that you need to rest. Try to study minimally and recover as soon as you can so that you can get back to studying. Third, build your study stamina early. Medical school often requires long periods of focused work, and concentration is a skill that improves with practice. Techniques like the Pomodoro method or anything else you can find online to help you can help you gradually increase your ability to study for extended periods while still taking intentional breaks to stay productive. Finally, maintain your perspective. Don't underestimate your exams, but don't let them intimidate you either. Approach each assessment with humility. Recognize there's always more to learn, and with resilience, understand that one disappointing score does not define your ability or your future as a physician. Do learn from your mistakes, do stay consistent, and trust the process you've built for yourself. If there's one message I hope you remember from this presentation, it's this: that success in medical school isn't about finding the perfect resource or the perfect schedule. It's about building a sustainable system for yourself, trusting that process, and showing up consistently every single day. To finish this video, I hope you were able to appreciate the available third-party products, the tools such as Amboss and Anki that you are able to use. And look, you don't have to study how I approached the first 2 years of med school, but at least you have a reference of how I studied to overcome the first 2 years of med school. So thank you for your time. I wish you the best of luck in medical school. Have a good day.